Okay, good morning, everybody. We're having a little technical difficulty this morning, but we are going to get started. So, welcome to the 13th Annual Patient Safety Summit. Envision a safer future for healthcare. We have this jazzy little PowerPoint that they put together for you, and we're going to play through it. First, we want to introduce the platinum sponsor, Methodist Health System. Big shout out for them. Let's give them a big shout out. Thank you for being a platinum sponsor. That's terrific. Woo! And here we go with our first video of the day. Thank you so much. I do want to review, we do have our silver sponsors and a couple more silver sponsors. There's an incredible the Safety Summit Planning Committee and some details, some logistical stuff that you don't want to miss. The posters can be viewed at this website. You can review the posters and complete a short quiz to be entered to win an autographed copy of the Keynoter's book. That's me, Generation Inc. And so we will be giving away a couple copies of that book today, so be sure to pay attention and play along. Here's how to claim your CEs. I think that's important stuff. You all wanted to be able to do that, claim those CEs. And if I'm rolling through these slides too fast, we will be sure to get you these slides after our presentation is over. And a little post-summit info right here. And the recordings will be available at this website. And as a reminder, the CEs will only be awarded for live attendance. So no snoozing during the presentation. And here's a little conflict of interest statement. No conflict of interest with any of our speakers. So that's the legalese in our presentation today. My name is Meagan Johnson. We had a little intro planned, but I'm going to get to do my own intro today. My name is Meagan Johnson. I'm a professional speaker, author, and generational humorist. I was lucky enough to co-write a book called Generations, Inc. with my baby boomer dad. And just to let all of you know that my baby boomer dad is in the studio audience today. Dad, give a shout out.
Hello!
Yay! Hopefully you heard him. So we are in a studio because it is a virtual world now, but I want to assure everybody that we're practicing social distancing, and we also are wearing masks when we are not on camera. So I'll be talking to my live audience, which is my dad, and also be talking to you. And I encourage you to be sure to, chat in. We're going to try to answer some questions at the end of the presentation, but if we don't have time to address all your questions, I will give you a way to contact me. You can contact me anytime to answer any of your questions that you'd like to have answered. All right, so a little flurry of activity. I'm going to switch my PowerPoints over here right now. 1 second. You get to talk amongst yourselves for just a minute while I switch my PowerPoints over. Virtual world is always so exciting. It's always something a little bit different, as I'm sure everybody has learned. All right. Excellent. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a professional speaker. I've been speaking since 1997 about the incredible generations. And something is interesting, as I've noticed, is I hear a lot of people talking about Generation Z. These are people born after 1998, Generation Z. And then also the younger millennials. Everybody's talking about the younger generation. My cousin, his name is Brendan, he is actually a very young millennial. So he's right there at the edge of millennial Gen Z, and he recently got a tattoo. Now I have to say, one of the things I find so exciting about the younger generation is they really have brought tattoos into the mainstream. Haven't they? I mean, because when I was a little kid, maybe this happened to some of you, but when I was a little kid, and if you went somewhere and someone with a tattoo walked in, your mother pulled you close. Because back then, only two types of people had tattoos. People that had been in the military, which was fine and good, but most importantly, people that had just gotten out of prison, right? The hooskow. But I mean, that's not even the case anymore. We don't even call them tattoos. I'm going to ask you, if you've got a chat box open, what do we call them? We don't even call them tattoos. What do we call them? Let me know, audience. Give me some answers. We have some people in the room here saying we call them tats, body art, ink. Body art is my favorite phrase for tattoos, because that's really what it is. It's like a little work of art you get to carry with you wherever you go. I am too afraid to get a tattoo, but I love it when other people do it. So when I heard my cousin Brendan was getting a tattoo, I was really excited. I thought, what's he going to get? I mean, that's the big question, right? What are you going to get? Because you can choose whatever you want, and you better like it a lot. I thought, will he get a dragon from the HBO show Game of Thrones? How cool would that be? Or a rainbow? Or a unicorn? Or, be very COVID, and, a mask? So when I saw Brendan recently, I rushed up to him. I said, let me see your tattoo. He rolls up his sleeve. One word he is tattooed on his arm. It reads, Brendan. He tattooed his own name on his arm. I looked at his mother. I said, he tattooed his name on his arm. She said he was going to tattoo it upside down so he could read it. So our workforce, our family life, we're full of multiple generations. And pre-event, I asked, some of you answered my survey questions, I asked you to describe the multiple generations. And one thing I asked was, please give me characteristics of, I forgot to turn the TV on. Please give me characteristics of the older workforce. Characteristics of the older workforce. Here's some of the words that some of you, that you filled out the surveys, here's some of the words that you've used to describe positive characteristics of the older workforce. They have wisdom, they have experience, they have knowledge, they're mentors, the customers like them and trust them, they have strong face-to-face communication skills, they're always on time, if not early, they're dependable, and they like to talk about the good old days. Those are the positive words that you told me about the older generation. Now on the flip side, I said, what are some frustrations you have with the older generation? Here are some of the words that you use to describe frustrations with the older generation. They resist change. That was a big one. A lot of the younger generation said, gosh, you know what? The older generation really resists change. You come to them with an idea. You say, hey, you know what? I've been working in healthcare quality and safety. I've been here for about a year. And I think if we move this, change this, flip this, turn this, it'll be bigger, it'll be brighter, save us money, save us time. People will love it. Patients will love it. Family members will love it. What do you think? Now this person over here has been in healthcare for a long time. They've been in healthcare before there was even health to care about. And they look at what that younger person's suggesting, and what do they say? That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Why won't this work? I've given this a lot of thought. Why won't it work? We tried that before. We tried this before? I mean, I've been working at this hospital for almost a year. I don't remember ever trying this. When did we try this? We tried it before you were born. Right? So sometimes the older generation resists change. That was another complaint. That was a complaint. Stuck in their ways. Oh, they stereotype the younger generation. Sometimes the younger generation says to me, just because I'm younger doesn't mean I can fix your DVD player, all right? Just because I'm younger doesn't mean I understand every single thing about technology. They're skeptical. Oh, they're slow. That was another complaint the younger generation had about the older generation. Slow. Sometimes they don't even get out of their car in the mornings. Everybody's looking out the window. You think we should go check on her? She's been sitting in there for about an hour. They don't embrace new technology. They call you on the phone to tell you they're sending you an email that you should print. And then maybe you can sign it and fax it back because we just put some new thermal paper in our fax machine. And the final complaint about the older generation was they like to talk about the good old days. So that was our older generation. Now, I also asked you to describe the younger generation. Here are some of the positive characteristics of the younger generation. And we're talking about Generation Z, young millennials. Here's some of the positives. They're creative. They're tech savvy. They will stand right next to you and text you. Then they look at you and say, did you get my text? They're entrepreneurial, they're passionate, they're environmentalists. They want to recycle stuff before we even use it. They're fun, they're energetic, they challenge the status quo, they're excited, and they embrace change. And we really have seen this as we're experiencing the COVID world. They really have embraced a lot of the changes that we have gone through since the pandemic. Now, on the opposite side, people say, you know what, though, the younger generation, sometimes they have a bad attitude. Okay? They don't want to come in on Saturdays or work the night shift, the graveyard shift. I think one of the nurses told me it was called the third shift. They're entitled. They want to know when they get a raise, when they get a promotion. I've been here for 2 weeks. They don't want to pay their dues, they complain, they have poor communication skills, gossip, lazy, apathetic, rude, disloyal, wants reward for no effort. But my favorite one's that last one. They want to have fun. And they'll tell you if they think the work's not fun. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work with that nurse. She eats her young. I don't want to do that. Now, I have to be honest. This last list, the list of the negative terms describing the younger generation, I actually didn't get that from the surveys at all. I took this list here, this negative list, I took this list directly out of a magazine. I took this list out of Life magazine, 1968. Baby boomers. How many of you are baby boomers born between 1964 and born between 1946 and 1964? Baby boomers, let's hear you shout out. Baby boomers. Baby boomers, let's review. Your manager thought you had bad attitudes. You complained, gossip, lazy, rude, disloyal, didn't want to pay your dues, and all you want to do is have fun. Now the baby boomers are sitting out there saying, well, that's all character building stuff. That's the stuff that made me who I am today. How many of you are Generation X? This is my generation, people born between 1965 and 1980. Let's hear a shout out, Gen Xers. Woohoo! Don't sit there so smug, Gen Xers. In 1998, Fortune magazine called us the gold collar workers. This was not a compliment. Here's a little snippet from the article. I love this last line. Work is not work. It is a hobby you happen to get paid for. So let me ask all of you, what's my point? My point is that really when we use these negative words to describe a younger generation, what we're really describing is a youthful generation. And my definition of youthful means new. They have a new, different set of experiences than you do. These experiences As I mentioned, I co-wrote a book with my baby boomer dad. These experiences in our book, we call them generational signposts. And a generational signpost is an event or phenomena that is specific to one generation. Now, I did have an audience member recently say to me, Meagan, but when you're talking about generations, when you're saying one generation behaves this way and another generation behaves this way, aren't you really generalizing or stereotyping or putting people in boxes? I mean, especially now when our country is so divided and we have so much animosity at times, shouldn't we be more about inclusion than exclusion? And that's not my intention at all when I talk about generations and different generational signposts. Because here's what a generational signpost does. A generational signpost explains how events, technology, and the economy shape various groups of people. Clusters of people born during a certain time frame have experienced similar situations and can be differentiated from other generations. For example, as I mentioned, I have my baby boomer dad here in the audience, and I know that when my dad was a kid, he had a paper route. Isn't that right, Dad?
That's right.
He says yes. How old were you when you had a paper route, Dad?
I was 12.
You were 12.
Yes.
Okay, you're 12. My dad is trying to push his way out of the camera, into the camera shot. Here he comes. He's going to come into the camera shot. Okay, stay 6 feet away. I've got healthcare people in the audience. You were 12 years old when you had a paper route.
That's right.
Do a morning route or an afternoon route?
Morning.
Morning. What time did you get up in the morning to deliver?
4:30.
4:30 in the morning. I didn't even know 4:30 existed. Did you deliver papers Monday through Friday?
No. 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yes, and Sunday was the worst because that's the biggest paper.
The biggest paper.
Yes.
7 days a week, overachiever.
It was actually 1,000 pounds on my
1,000 pounds. Even when the bag was empty, it was 1,000 pounds. Yeah. Okay. And most importantly, how old were you when you had a paper route, Dad?
I was 12.
12 years old. All right, let's give my dad a little virtual applause. Yay, yay. All right, thank you, Dad. You can go back to your seat. I did not know he was going to do that. It's take your parents to work day. So my point being is how many of you receive a newspaper? And when I say receive a newspaper, I don't mean the virtual copy, the physical newspaper. And if you do receive the newspaper, how many of you have it delivered by a 12-year-old? No. Who delivers your paper? An adult. And that adult drives by in their car, and if you happen to be standing out there when they drive by, they aim it at you. Baby boomers, Gen Xers. Remember when we were little kids, our school was going to have a fundraiser? Remember those fundraisers? Sell candy? How'd you sell that candy, baby boomers and Gen Xers? Door to door. Everybody, how do you sell your kids candy today? You buy it all. You just look at your kid and say, let's get it over with. I'll take one of everything. So what's my point? My point is that my dad, Larry, baby boomer Larry over there, he had a generational signpost delivering newspapers that taught him time management skills, money handling skills, customer service skills. Well, that generational signpost is gone. That's true of all of us. No matter where you fall on the generational timeline, we all have generational signposts that change, evolve, and sometimes dissolve. But the conflict occurs, and there is conflict. 60% of employers report tension between the generations. 70% of older employees are dismissive of younger employee talents, and 50% of younger employees are dismissive of older employee talents. The conflict occurs is because we have an emotional attachment, an emotional connection to our generational signposts that is missing with someone from a different generation. And we also have an expectation of people, the people we work with, the people we live with. We have an expectation in part based upon our own generational signpost, a generational signpost that has no emotional connection to someone from a different generation. Now, I was lucky to talk to quite a few of you before being here today. And I asked some of my long-term healthcare people, I said, please tell me, how has healthcare changed, especially when it comes to safety and quality? And somebody said, you know what, it really has changed, because we have gone from being a kind of sit back and wait to see what happens. Is there a problem that occurs? So for example, why do we have a lot of falls? To being more proactive, trying to be more proactive and making sure things don't happen, right? And also technology. In healthcare, you're using technology to help communicate with patients, especially now, doing also all these visits virtually with patients. But technology also is helping you look at how can we make things safer? How can we improve the quality for patients? So technology has improved and changed the way we do our jobs, but also the way we communicate. And I would have to say that is what I heard consistently from everybody that I spoke to, is the miscommunications we have with patients, family members, right? Physicians, staff. It's those miscommunications that can really lead to patient complaints or sometimes safety issues. I was recently at a shopping mall. This was before COVID. And you know when you go to the shopping mall, they've got that up. When you used to go to the shopping mall, they'd have that big mall directory that showed you an outline of the mall and a list of all the stores. There was a 3-year-old girl. She was standing in front of that mall directory sign. She was taking her finger, she was placing it on the mall directory sign, and she was moving her hand across that sign, trying to manipulate and change the images. And when the image didn't move, she looked at her mother and said, "It's broke." Well, that little girl, she has a different expectation of what the vendors in the mall are going to do to communicate and connect with her. Just like your employees, the people that you manage, family members, patients, the hospital staff, physicians, we all have different expectations of what someone else is going to do to communicate successfully with us. And that's my goal in our time together. Because really, most people, in fact, according to a survey, 81% of full-time employees would rather join a company that values open communication versus one that offers perks like free food or gym memberships. So we place a high value on open communication. And I want to take a little generational journey. Let's take a look at the generations and what we can do to successfully communicate and connect with them. Now, one of the people I was lucky enough to interview was Marisa Valdez. Now, Marisa, I know that when we were talking on the phone, I pronounced your name. You said I pronounced it correctly, so hopefully under the pressure of the camera, I just said it correctly again. But she is a baby boomer. She has been working in healthcare for 38 years. I asked her to tell me a little bit about changes and how the relationship between the healthcare system and the patient has changed. And this is what she had to say.
We've got to look at our patients, not as patients, but as clients, and make sure that we are setting expectations correctly, so that when patients evaluate their satisfaction, they're not doing it like if this was the Ritz, but they're doing it, they can expect some pain, they can expect things that they don't want. You don't come to a hospital to have fun. So, but if we set the expectations properly and the teams work together to ensure that the patient understands what's going to happen and we are providing safe, quality care.
Thank you, Marisa. If you know her, would you please give her a big shout out? We had such a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to her. But what I loved what she said was treating patients as clients and help in managing their expectations. And I believe understanding generations will help us do that. So, a few little details. I have what's called a generational decoder card. It is a whoops, that's Marisa patients, again. I love you, Marisa, but we don't want to hear your video again. There we go. I have a generational decoder card. It is a low down dirty summary of everything we're talking about. If you would like a digital copy of the Generational Decoder card, shoot me an email. There's my email address, Meagan@meaganjohnson.com. If you're one of those people, you say, Meagan, I'm one of those people who likes to hold something physical in my hand, I will happily postal mail you a Generational Decoder card. Just shoot me an email saying, I'd like to have a Generational Decoder card. I also promised we would be giving away copies of the book, Generations, Inc. If you would like to enter to win a copy after this presentation from me, send me an email, Meagan@meaganjohnson.com. Put something in the subject line like, I want to win a book, and I will throw your name into the hat, and we will we'll have a book drawing. If you're one of those people that likes to keep in contact digitally, please send me a text. Send a text the word generations to number 44222. Text the word generations to number 44222, and you will also get a complimentary download of one of my presentations. All right, so that's all of our digital and handheld information, but I do have a quiz for you. Can anybody tell me who this person is right here? And I'm going to give everybody a chance to answer. I'm looking at the chat box. Anybody know who this is right here? She's got those cute little barrettes. Somebody in the studio is asking if it is me. I appreciate that because that is a cute picture. I'm going to give you a second or two. It is our friend Patty. Would you give Patty a big round of applause, please? And if you know Patty, give Patty a shout out. Thank you so much. That's such awesome. Let's start our generational timeline with the traditional generation, sometimes called the mature generation, sometimes called the silent generation. My favorite name for this generation is one coined by Tom Brokaw, the greatest generation. These are people born before 1945. Now, you may have some people from this generation in your family. You may experience them in the healthcare system. I know a lot of you don't have direct face-to-face patient interaction, but we do. They are a big piece of the healthcare system. Number one complaint from this generation, the traditional generation, is we don't ask their opinion. Isn't that interesting? We have people in our lives that have more experience than we do, have solved some of life's bigger problems, and we forget to ask their opinion. You see, I think the traditional generation has spoiled us. If the traditional generation says to you, I will be there tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., what time do they show up? 7:45, right? The traditional generation really has built the groundwork our society is built on today. Products that we use every single day, washing machines, dryers, microwave ovens, television sets, all these products were designed, developed, and brought to market by this one generation. This is a picture of Fred Winter. Fred Winter is 101 years old. He recently completed the Michigan Senior Olympics, 101 years old. He was number one in his age class. He was the only one in his age class. But they asked him after he was done competing, they said, Mr. Winter, how is it at 101 years old you're out here competing? And whenever people get asked these types of questions, what is it you've done that makes you special or unique? Deep down, I think to myself, I really hope Mr. Winter says that he cocktails heavily and he eats fried foods. But no, Mr. Winter's answer was he does 100 push-ups a day. 100 push-ups a day! I was feeling very discouraged until an audience member said, well, you should hear about this guy. At age 112, he was America's oldest veteran. You may recognize him because he is from Texas. He recently passed away. But before he passed away, he was quoted as saying, I still smoke cigars and I still drink whiskey every day. That is my kind of person right there. Now, as the traditional generation, as this generation came home from World War II, they began to have children, which is what I think these two people are about to do. And that's where we experienced the baby boom. These are people born between 1946 and 1964. Baby boomers? I know I asked you once, gonna ask you again, raise your hands, raise them high. Got my baby boomer dad, you can hear my baby boomer dad. This generation is huge. 72 million people were born. 72 million. Now in healthcare, I know you know this, but think about this. As the baby boomers reach senior citizenship, the number of senior citizens in our country is going to double. That's like taking every single person that lives in California and every single person that lives in New England states. That's how many senior citizens we're going to have. And they're still going to be driving. So slow. So very slow. With their blinker on. And not turning, just slow, not turning. Baby boom. In 1964, Time magazine named baby boomers the man of the year. They said baby boomers are to clean up our cities, end racial discrimination, and find a cure for the common cold. Inside every baby boomer, there is a kid wondering what the heck happened. This guy's just wondering what the heck happened to my pants. His outfit is a true virtual outfit. No shoes, no pants. Baby boomers were the first generation to ever be graded on a report card, works well and plays well with others. Yes, others. And the reason being is baby boomers are the first generation where education became an expectation. Prior to that, education was unusual. My grandfather, he was from the traditional generation. His family took him out of school when he was 12 years old. My other grandfather, also from the traditional generation, did go to college. But the generational difference was he went to college following World War II with the help of the GI Bill. Baby boomers are the first generation where education became an expectation. And baby boomers had large classroom sizes. 30 kids to a class, 40 kids to a class, 50. I actually had an audience member tell me at the beginning of the year she had 70 kids in her first grade class. 70. One teacher. If I were that teacher, I'd call in sick every day. 70. So the ripple effect, the changes we've seen in the workplace that you may experience in your teams, is that baby boomers value teamwork. They became known as the teamwork generation. Think about the 80s. As baby boomers began to assume management positions, that's when we really started talking about teams. Having a team meeting, elected a team leader, had a group hug, kumbaya. That's baby boomer stuff. Now, there is a myth. I don't know, call it a myth. There's an assumption we make about baby boomers that is not entirely accurate. And I'm just as guilty of this assumption that we make about baby boomers. And that assumption is that baby boomers don't use technology. In fact, we even tease baby boomers about their lack of technology skills. But I like to point out, especially if I've got a lot of younger people in the room, I do like to point out that baby boomers were the first iPhone users. Yeah, baby boomers had iPhones before anybody. They were blowing their phones up. You know what? I have a video. I want to play you a video. And this is the CEO. Well, he is no longer the CEO. He was the CEO of T-Mobile. And he talks about baby boomers and technology because you know what? It's not accurate. Baby boomers do use technology. I would say that probably every baby boomer that's watching virtually uses technology. But this is John Legere. He recently left T-Mobile. But here's a little video of him talking about technology. Now, I'm going to warn you about this video. There is profanity, but I bleeped it out. However, when I took it to the powers that be and said, you know what, I want to play this video, it's got profanity, but it's been bleeped out, is that okay? Is this audience going to find this offensive? They said, are you kidding? This audience works in quality and safety control healthcare. They've heard it all. So, here we go.
Hi, I'm back, and I'm here today to fix something that drives me completely crazy, and I bet I'm not alone. I'm talking about the way the wireless industry treats boomers and beyond. I'm sure you've seen it. The belittling, the condescending offers, and not to mention the way they jack up prices on them. It's absolute and degrading at the highest level. This generation deserves a little respect. I mean, they invented the whole wireless industry to begin with. Boomers are the most loyal, long-term wireless customers in the world. Why are they being patronized by the carriers? Seriously, it feels a little something like this.
Did you see Madeline's post?
Yes. Tired of squinting and struggling with that smart aleck phone when all you want is big buttons? No.
We love our phones.
Now get everything you could possibly want on a phone made just for you. Big buttons, phone calls. Wow! Confused by all these newfangled words like data, social media, and streaming.
Not really.
We're always streaming and using data.
Now you don't have to worry about all that pesky data.
What about Facebook?
You're too old to even know what that is.
I don't think you know us very well.
This is total.
But let's say you're a person, you say, you know what, Meagan, I'm working with somebody who is slow to embrace technology. Here's what we need to be able to explain to people who are slow to embrace technology. How will technology make my job or life easier? How will technology make my job or life easier? And the way to do that is we need to take time to demonstrate to people who are slow to embrace that technology, take time to show them how it will make their job or life easier. Now, it is a little more challenging today in the virtual world because before we all went virtual, I used to say to people, show them one-on-one, in person. So we can't always do that in that setting, but the more time you can explain and help someone walk through the process of technology and make sure you're available to answer the questions, I think you'll find them quicker to embrace that technology. But we have to help them understand how will technology make their job or life easier. Now, I spoke to Margaret Saldana. If you know Margaret, please give her a big shout out. Margaret and I were chatting on the phone, and this is what she said. She is also a baby boomer. She has 38 years in healthcare. That means since 1982, she has been in healthcare. We were talking about technology, and this is what she had to say. She said there may be an over-reliance of technology in healthcare. Handheld devices assist with lab specimen collection, but staff are still accountable to follow positive patient identification process. Patients need to be asked their name and date of birth when completing procedures such as a lab specimen collection. The label must match the patient. Now, what I loved what Margaret had to say was, you know what? It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can use technology to make certain aspects of our work life easier. Like I said, how is technology going to make my job or life easier? But doesn't mean that we want to completely abandon that human touch. If you know Margaret, give her a big shout out. Thank you again, Margaret, for the time you spent with me on the phone. My grandmother, she comes from the traditional generation. And I came to pick her up for dinner one evening, and she was having her evening cocktail. She actually came to hear me speak right before everything shut down. She sat right up front. I was so excited that she was there. And when it was all over, I rushed up to her and I said, well, you know, Grandma, what do you think? She said, I heard that story you told about me. I said, what about it? She said, you made me sound like a lush in front of all those people. So I promised my grandmother that I would tell every audience she only has one drink every half hour. So there's my grandmother. I show up to pick her up, but I'm in a hurry. You know, I feel it's like my agenda that's important. So I said to my grandma, come on, Grandma, let's go. And my grandmother says to me, let me finish my drink. And I said to her, this is my grandmother. She comes from the traditional generation. She experienced the Great Depression. I said to my grandmother, just pour that drink out. She said, pour it out. She said, oh, Meg, I will not waste my drink. I said, don't worry, Grandma. We'll get you another drink at the restaurant. Let's go. She said, the restaurant? She said, oh, Meg, those are too expensive. Those of you that said expensive, you know my grandmother. I said, Grandma, it doesn't matter how much the drink costs. I will buy you your drink. Just get in the car. Now, if you said to anybody in my peer group, my generational peer group, if you said to them, get into the car quickly, and if you do, I will buy you your drink when we arrive, they'd be in the car. Not my grandma. My grandma just stood there. She stood there and she finished her drink. Didn't say one word to me while she did it. Now, I love my grandmother. I think she's amazing. She experienced hardships in her life that I really cannot understand. But you know, I still got annoyed. It still irritated me she wouldn't throw the drink away. And it irritated me because my expectation of her behavior was based upon my generational signpost. So can you imagine you have 72 million baby boomers living in a world that had been created by the traditional generation. And so what baby boomers began to do during the late 60s and the early 70s is baby boomers really began to challenge and question the rules. And during the late 60s and the early 70s, a lot of baby boomers had pharmaceutical assistants.
I resent that.
Some of you had more pharmaceutical assistants than others. This is actually a picture of my two favorite baby boomers, my mom and dad. You saw my dad up here earlier. That's my dad, though, in the center, wearing with what could be best described as a tablecloth. Where'd you get that blouse, Dad? Did you see Grandma's tablecloth? Make yourself a shirt out of it? I have to tell you, when it comes to parents, I hit the parental jackpot. I have two of the nicest people for parents. But what is that hot mess my mother is wearing? My mother's sitting off to the side. What is that hot mess? You got holes, you got bands of color, you got fringe. She actually made it herself with a big stick. What do you call those things? Poncho. You call it a poncho. You pull it over your head. But I'll tell you what I love the most about this picture. My entire adolescence, my mother told me she never smoked. And then I found this picture. I pointed to my mom. I said, Mom, what's that? She said, oh, that? She said, I was just holding it for somebody else. And she expected me to believe her. But baby boomers were successful by challenging the rules. By challenging the rules, we began to see the desegregation of schools. By challenging the rules, the job market began to open up for women. In 1950, classified ads were separated by gender. There were help wanted ads for men, and there were help wanted ads for women. And in 1950, it was perfectly legal to list the same job in both columns with two different salaries. And this is actually an ad for Hilton Hotels. Job requirements: good feet, eyesight, and a trim figure. I love how they specify that your feet have to be good, but I guess eyesight, you just have to have it. It doesn't need to be good or bad. This is actually an ad for housekeeping. Can you imagine putting that description now for, a quality manager? But as baby boomers challenged the rules and the job market began to open up for women, it coincided with the Vietnam War, and the birth rate began to fall. This is where we have Generation X. People born between 1965 and 1980. Gen Xers, big shout out for the Gen Xers. Woohoo! Generation X. We're actually the smallest generation. 1 in 3 is a Gen Xer. I'm sorry, 1 in 6 is a Gen Xer. We represent only 13% of the entire population. We were lucky to get a name, Gen Xers. In fact, if this were the Brady Bunch, Gen Xers, Generation X, we would be Jan. We're the forgotten middle child. Nobody cares about us. Nobody wanted to go to prom with us. We're stuck. We're stuck between the cute millennial sister, Cindy, and the more popular sister, help me out with her name, Marsha. And Generation X were the first generation to have in large numbers both parents working outside the home. So when we came home from school, Mom wasn't there. Dad wasn't there. Nobody was there. What did we call this phenomenon? Does anybody remember? Latchkey kids. I was a latchkey kid. And I will tell you, I will give you the unvarnished truth about being a latchkey kid. It was awesome! Who thought this up? It was incredible. School let out at 2:35, and you were free to go. Nobody was home waiting for us. We sauntered on home when we felt like it. We let ourselves right in the front door. We could let ourselves in the front door because we had our own key. Where do we keep our key, Gen Xers? Anybody remember? A little string around your neck. We let ourselves into the house, and there sitting on the kitchen counter was a list of tasks that had been left by management. And here are the rules. The task must be completed on time. On time just means before management. Management is Mom and Dad. They're due home at 6 o'clock. So if they're due home at 6 o'clock, when do we start doing those tasks? about 5:45. But it's up to us to decide. We can decide when to start, when to stop. If we want to take a break, we take a break. And if something goes wrong, is there anybody there to help us? No. We got to solve the problem, complete the task, and move on. So Generation X has become our most independent generation. All right, here's a quick generational quiz. What movie is this guy from? Does anybody remember? It was a Gen X classic. Yes, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Oh, so cute in this movie, so cute. But we're the most independent generation. And Generation X joins you on your teams, and their attitude is, hey, tell me what you want done, give me the tools and training to do it, and then just leave me alone. And we can't forget about our friends, the baby boomers. Baby boomers are our teamwork generation. There are baby boomers out there that have meetings to talk about the next meeting. Generation X, this is before the internet. What did we do to entertain ourselves, Gen Xers? What did we do to entertain ourselves? We watched TV. TV became a signpost for Generation X. I know. Whenever I start talking about TV, baby boomers get very defiant. Baby boomers say out there say, you know, we had TV. Sure you did. Baby boomers. Hey, baby boomer dad, my audience member.
Yeah,
Do you remember the first color TV in your neighborhood?
I do.
Yeah, first color TV in his neighborhood. If you didn't have a color TV, what kind of TV did you have?
A black and white.
Black and white. I'll tell you, this is not a lie. When I was a little kid, I remember my dad telling me about a black and white TV. I remember thinking, black and white? How do you get the color out? And why would you do such a thing? How many TVs did you have growing up, Dad? One. It was huge. The thing was mammoth. The screen was only this big, but the TV was ginormous. And what happened if you wanted to change the channel? What'd you have to do?
Get up and go change it.
Get up. You had to walk to the TV. This is when watching TV was a physical activity. Walk to the TV. But that knob that turned the channel, that knob had fallen off months ago. It was just a pair of pliers stuck there now. What happened if you wanted to get better reception? What did you do?
Coat hanger.
You adjusted the antenna
Right.
that had broke off, and you replaced it with a coat hanger that you wrapped in aluminum foil. You see, millennials, Gen Z, baby boomers understand technology just fine. And then in 1968, a television producer asked herself this generational point of no return question. And that question was, what if we took learning for children and we made learning taste more like ice cream than spinach? And the answer to that question is a show that's still on the air today called Sesame Street. And Sesame Street revolutionized children's programming. Prior to Sesame Street, children's programming was slow, methodical. Remember that show, Captain Kangaroo? Yeah, what was he the captain of? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But Sesame Street embraced a whole new formula. And the formula was rapidly changing images, music, and color. MTV used the same formula in the 80s. But most importantly, Sesame Street took learning and it made learning fun. So some of you may say, you know, so what? How does that impact me when I'm dealing with quality and safety in a medical setting? How does it impact me when I'm interacting with my coworkers? Well, what that means is that for Generation X and every generation that followed, learning and fun are intertwined. Not separate entities, but intertwined. And Generation X watched both of their parents work extremely hard, sometimes at the expense of the family. 50% of Gen Xers come from divorce. Until October of '87. Some of you might remember that generational signpost.
Yep, Black Monday.
Now all of a sudden my audience member is chiming in again. Black Monday. He doesn't quite understand his cues yet. Black Monday. Largest one-day stock market crash our country had ever experienced. And that stock market crash of 87 reshaped the relationship employees have with their employer. Prior to Black Monday, the general attitude in our country was, you got a job, and how long did you stay at that job, baby boomer?
For life.
For life, right? You got a job at a medical facility, a hospital, you stayed there forever until you retired or died or whatever happened, but you stayed. That changed. And Generation X is the first generation to perceive themselves as a commodity. And it's not so much the job, but the experience. What's the experience I'm going to have working in quality? How is working in quality and safety different than working in a bedside situation? But what is the experience? Now, I spoke to Annabella, and I pronounced her name correctly when I was on the phone, so I'm going to give it another shot. Zakarian. Hopefully I said your name correctly again. If you know Annabella, give her a big shout out. She is a Gen Xer. She has 26 years in healthcare. All right. She and I were talking, and I asked her about her job, and this is what she had to say. She said, I like problem solving. I get a kick out of seeing something that needs to be improved and taking action. When the team looks at an issue and solves the problem, it allows us to step out with a better process. Give her a big round of applause. If you know her, give her a shout out. But I love what she had to say. I love what she told me, because she didn't tell me about, hey, you know what, I sit in meetings, I review reports, I look at the accidents or anything, that incidents that have happened, the night before. She talked about, I get a kick out of problem solving. I like knowing that we're going to step out with a better process, that we're going to improve patient care by taking these actions. She talked about the experience. All right, after 1980, the birth rate started to climb. This is where we have millennials. If you're a millennial, shout out for the millennials. Yes, millennials. These are people born between 1981 and 1996, millennials. So, for the first time in history, we have two generations. We have Gen Xers, we have millennials. We're side by side, and we have the same set of parents. Baby boomers. Baby boomers are parents to both Gen Xers and millennials. And there are some of you baby boomers, you had yourself a Gen X kid, you thought, well, that stunk. I'm going to have myself a millennial now. But you're a different type of parent to the millennial than you were to Gen Xer. We did not use the term latchkey kid to describe millennials. We said things like stay-at-home dad, soccer mom, play dates, family time. It's the quality of the time that matters. This generation, millennials, have had parental involvement. In fact, according to a Gallup poll, 90% of millennials report being very close to their parents. 90% of millennials say, yes, I am close to my parents. Compare that to 1974, 40% of baby boomers said they'd be better off without their parents. You're a tough group, baby boomers, a very tough group. All right, so you remember the beginning of my presentation, I talked about the total number of baby boomers. Anybody remember what that number was? Baby boomer, my audience, do you remember what that number was, the total number of baby boomers?
70 million.
Okay, you get an A for effort, but no, your answer was wrong. 72 million. He said 70 million. 72 million.
What's a 2 million? That's no big deal.
What's 2 million? What's 2 million? Who cares? 72 million. You ready for the total number of millennials? 80 million. They've surpassed the baby boomers. They are currently 40% of the workforce, and in 10 years, they'll be 75% of the global workforce. 59% have never been married. 36% live in multi-adult households. 80% want to work for a company that cares about the environmental impact. And here is something that I find so energizing and passionate about the millennials. Millennials don't only just want to work for a company that cares about the environmental impact, they want to do business interactions with companies and organizations that care about their environmental impact. One of the top 100 millennial brands is REI. Now, REI is an outdoor store. If you're a camper or a hiker or you like to kayak or anything like that, you probably are familiar with REI. And I have to be honest, when I read this, it didn't surprise me. I mean, REI is very outspoken in their environmentalist activities, their recycling activities. They are out front with addressing climate and leaving a place better than when we found it. But an organization that did surprise me was Wegmans grocery store. Now, I know most of you are in Texas. I'm in Arizona. We don't have Wegmans. This is an East Coast grocery store. But the Wegmans are known for treating their employees well. That's one of the things they're well known for, is their treatment of employees. They also have a very do-good social agenda. And they recently had an app-based service to assist blind shoppers. So millennials are the generation that are really putting their money where their mouth is, saying, you know what, I'm not only going to work for a company that cares about their environmental impact, but I also going to do business and interact with companies that care about their environmental impact. Millennials also have taken the traditional corporate ladder and crushed it and replaced it with a corporate lattice. And we say to millennials, when we say things to millennials like, you need to pay your dues to climb the ladder, that's a disconnect. Because it's not about putting in the time to pay your dues to climb the ladder, it's about building a lattice. Think about a lattice. A lattice is flat, it has multiple connections. No one connection is more important than the other, but we need them all for a strong structure. And so it's not about paying your dues to build your lattice, it's about building your lattice from day one. And if you interact with millennials, I encourage you to be thinking about how can I help that millennial build their lattice. It is also why millennials name a collaborative work environment as the top 2 characteristics they look for in a place to work. They want to collaborate and they want to create a lattice, a connection, a series of connections with the people they work with, the people they interact with. A company that does this very well is Zappos.com, online shoe retailer. I wish I never discovered that site. But Zappos is actually headquartered in Vegas. And if you are ever in Vegas, once we are allowed to travel freely and you're in Vegas, I encourage you to tour their headquarters. They have a tour you can take at the headquarters. Even if you work in healthcare, you're going to walk away with some great insights on just how to do things better, to improve your processes. But Zappos, part of their whole idea is they want to create an environment that their younger employees feel comfortable connecting and talking to anybody and everybody. So they give them access to a variety of people. So for example, this again was before COVID. This is a workspace. It's a typical workspace at Zappos. But that's Tony. He is the CEO, one of the founding members of Zappos. That's his desk, right out there with everybody else's desk. The idea being, hey, you know what? We want you to surround you with people that you can connect with. Now, I have had people say to me, Meagan, what is, you kind of see those bottles in the corner, the background, the bottles. People ask, what are those? Those are actually, they're open bars. It's an open bar. That is why when you call over at Zappos, everybody's in such a good mood when you call over there. Now some of you say, but Meagan, that's Zappos. We're healthcare. You know, they're making shoes. We're taking care of patients. We're addressing safety issues. You know, that's a little bit more serious than you fall off your high heels. Okay, so I got you on that one. This is a guy interviewed. His name is Tony. His name is Adam Rowers. He works for Bethany Retirement Living, assisted living, one of our most highly regulated industries in our country. He said to me, I got rid of annual reviews. He said, because the young people that work for me today, do not care about what happened a year ago. They care about, and I thought this was very insightful, they care about the relationship they have with their employer. He said, and I feel it is part of my job to facilitate a conversation about that relationship. He said, so I got rid of annual reviews. I replaced it with the stay interview. First stay interview occurs within the first 60 days of employment, followed by whenever a supervisor or manager feels another stay interview needs to occur. Meaning you feel like someone's getting burned out. Someone's not as engaged as they had once been. You can perform a stay interview. Here's some of the questions on the stay interview. I won't read them all, but I love that second one. When was the last time you thought about leaving your job, and what was the cause of you thinking about leaving? He said, we want to know that beforehand. Typically, when do we ask these types of questions of someone? At an exit interview. Yeah, it's too late. If we're asking these types of questions at an exit interview, it's too late. He said he had a young woman, a young millennial, who just didn't seem as engaged, and he said she just wasn't as enthusiastic with the residents as she had once been. And so he said we performed a stay interview, and come to find out that she had a transportation issue, and that by changing her hours, we were able to help her solve her transportation issue. He said if we had not performed that stay interview, we would have lost a good employee who cared about the residents and their family members. Here's a millennial myth. Millennials want to be told thank you for just showing up, right? We hear that a lot. Or we hear it in that millennials want a trophy. That's the other one. Millennials just want a trophy for being here. You know what? That's just not true. That is a millennial myth. Here is a multi-generational truth. Most of us want to be told thank you. In a room of 100 people, there might be 2 people that don't want to be told thank you. Most people want to be told thank you. So I don't know why we're blaming millennials, because millennials had the guts to say, hey, tell me thanks. So most of us want to be told thank you. Here's where I think we have our generational disconnect. Millennials do have a higher desire for feedback than previous generations. 60% of millennials report they like connecting with their managers at least once a day. 40% of millennials want feedback every week, and 70% of millennials are satisfied at their place of employment when they receive detailed feedback from their supervisor. And now that we're doing so much virtually, that actually makes feedback a little easier. Just like somebody said to me, one thing that's beneficial about so much electronic and virtual, it's made getting physicians' signatures and approvals a little bit easier. So it is doing so much virtually can make feedback a little bit easier in giving it to our millennials and our Gen Z coworkers and employees. USA Today recently had an article. They interviewed students who are about to graduate college, and in this study, the professors and the students that were interviewed, the professors were dumbfounded because the students kept turning in papers filled with instant message language. Right? We all know what instant message language is, yep. Substituting numbers and letters and shortening our sentences. And in the same study, when they interviewed the students were just as confused because they weren't even aware they were using this instant message language. And as I sat there and I read this article, I thought, wow, even the way we write to each other has changed. So for example, if somebody from the traditional generation, now that's my grandma, if someone from the traditional generation is going to write a letter to Tom Smith, how would the traditional generation start that letter to Tom Smith? Dear Mr. Smith. Yeah, dear Mr. Smith, sure. How would the baby boomers start that letter to Tom Smith? Dear Tom, all right? How would the Gen Xers start that letter to Tom Smith? Tom. How would the millennials start that letter to Tom Smith? Yo, bro, hey, brah. They wouldn't write a letter. When was the last time you got a letter from a millennial? But they would send you a what? A text. And the text would say, I'm too hot for you. And now they don't even send you a text of letters and numbers. They send you a text full of what? Emojis. Get it? I'm too hot for you. That's a little you there at the end of the sentence. Do you know how hard it is to find the right emoji? It's really almost easy to write out the sentence. Emoji hunting is hard. What's my point? My point is that we have engaged, talented millennials who have chosen healthcare because they want to make a difference. Right? They've chosen healthcare because they want to make a difference. And we discount the ideas they bring. We discount the ideas they bring into healthcare because their ideas stem from a different skill set than we had at that age. Hey, just because it worked before doesn't mean it's going to work this time. So just because it's the way you've always done it doesn't mean it's got to be the way you do it today. You say, but Meagan, hey, we're in healthcare. We can't just change all the rules. I mean, we're about safety and quality. We can't just throw all the rules out the window. I got it. So you've got a millennial, wants to move it, change it, flip it, turn it, make it bigger, make it brighter, make it faster. Rather than saying no, which I think that's our instinct. When someone comes along with less experience than we have, maybe they haven't worked at this facility as long as you have, and they come along and they challenge the way we do our jobs, and you are doing your job well, we tend to get defensive. Not everybody, but most of us get a little defensive. We think, hey, I'm doing my job. In fact, when someone comes along and says, hey, why don't you try it this way? We even have a little phrase. If it ain't broke, what? Don't fix it. But can you imagine? Remember when Steve Jobs was alive and he was in charge of Apple? And can you imagine when the team came to him and said, hey, Steve, we have this idea for a new phone. Yeah, we haven't been making phones, we make computers, but we're going to make this phone. It's not going to be like a flip phone at all. No, it's going to be flat and you're going to touch it. I mean, what if Steve Jobs said, no way. People love their flip phones. They're not going to go for this. No, he said, all right, let's try it. Let's try something different. So rather than saying no, ask yourself these 4 questions. Whatever they want to try, whatever they want to do, does it negatively impact cost, quality, safety, or service? Does it negatively impact cost, quality, safety, or service? If the answer is no, that's your little red flag to say, all right, let's try it. Worst case scenario, no change. Best case scenario is you have the equivalent of the Apple phone, of an iPhone in healthcare. You reinvent the way you do your jobs. You create an entire new category, excuse me, of being effective. This is important. It is important to allow millennials to challenge the way we do things because 80% of millennials view themselves as leaders today and 75% aspire to be leaders in the future. And if we want them to take over the reins as we leave and move on to the next stages in our lives, we have to allow them to assume responsibility and ownership for what they're doing. And one way to do that is to allow them to challenge the way that we've been doing things. Excuse me, I got a little cough here. Hold on one second, I gotta take a beverage break. All right, here's another millennial myth. Millennials are not loyal to their employer. I hear that one a lot. Millennials, they're not loyal. That's actually not true. Millennials do not leave their job any more or less than baby boomers and Gen Xers did at that same age. In fact, according to a Capital Group survey, more than 65% of millennials feel loyalty between the employee and the employer is important. And 85% of millennials who remain with their employer for at least 5 years were happy with their sense of purpose at work. Sense of purpose. So we talked about Gen Xers. That was the experience. They're very experience-driven with the job. Millennials were looking at a sense of purpose. Now, I have a video to play. Fingers crossed, the sound is okay. This is the CEO of SodaStream. They make reusable plastic bottles. They're on a mission to eliminate plastic, one-shot use plastic waste. So this is the CEO of SodaStream. It's a recruitment video. I encourage you to listen to the themes he hits upon in this recruitment video. Now, I'm not encouraging people to go work for SodaStream, though. Please keep that in mind. But listen to the themes he hits on in this video. No sound.
We not only make great sparkling water, but we also help save the planet from plastic waste. With one reusable bottle, we can save a family up to 3,000 disposable bottles every year. Now that's a revolution. We're rainmakers. She's a rainmaker.
I'm an accountant.
He's a rainmaker.
I'm a lawyer. We've just been sued by Coke. Again.
We're growing so fast, we're looking for new talent. People who can move mountains. The first thing a soda streamer needs is a creative mind. You want to see creativity? Look at Milos. Milos figured out a creative way to carry all these soda stream machines.
Congrats.
The second thing you need when you work at SodaStream is a sense of urgency. When you work here, you need to be able to move fast and always stay alert. The most important thing we're looking for is business courage. Here at SodaStream, we love taking risks. And yeah, sometimes we'll fail.
Do not fail.
We embrace failure.
Блять.
We're a family of 3,000 people from all religions and nationalities working side by side in peace and coexistence. So if you're creative, if you're fast, brave, and optimistic, you belong with us here at SodaStream, the #1 sparkling water brand in the world. So come join the revolution and let's make the world a better place. Milos, nice job today.
Daniel, I think I deserve a raise.
Mr. Mountain, he wants a raise.
Cut!
So when you watch that video, what themes did you notice? Diversity, challenge, hey, we're going to try stuff, we might fail, but we encourage you to do that, right? Acting fast, teamwork, right? Kind of thinking differently. I'm just not an employee at SodaStream, but embracing really a sense of purpose. Now, how does that look in the healthcare setting? So I spoke with Janelle Rowe. She is a millennial. She has 11 years in healthcare. And I think that what I like about with talking with Janelle is sometimes we have this idea of millennials being the neophytes in the work world, that they're just out of college, they don't have a lot of experience. Many millennials have multiple years of experience. They've been in the workforce for a while. So this is Janelle. She and I were talking about her experiences and kind of a sense of purpose and what she does. So here's a little video from Janelle. And if you know Janelle, give her a shout out. Thank you, Janelle, for talking to me. All right, so here we go. Janelle.
I feel like I'm making an impact, not just to the patients, but to the staff. And I think that's what's different, I think, is my outlook on it. A lot of the risk managers and patient safety managers, rightfully so, they're very focused on the patients. I look at the staff a lot and how can we support them and ensure that they have what they need so that they don't make this horrible mistake and have to live with it for the rest of their lives. You've heard the stories about nurses who have committed suicide after harming a patient severely. And so I look at that aspect of it, and that's really motivates me more. If I get the staff what they need, the patients are going to be safe just as a result.
I was in the car with my father. The song came on the radio called Love the One You're With. How many of you have heard this song? And when it came on the radio, I told my dad, I said, turn it up, I love this song. He said, really? He said, what do you like about it? I said, I like the message it sends. He said, well, what do you think the message is? I said, well, the line of the song, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. I said, what that means is if the one that you love dumps you, you gotta love the one you're with. And the one you're with is yourself. You have to love yourself first. I told my dad it is clearly a song about self-empowerment. He said, that's not what the song means. And after he told me what the song meant, I said, that's disgusting. Because it doesn't matter how old you are, there's certain things you never want to hear your mom or dad say. I said, here's the difference, Dad. You grew up in the 60s with that cornball slogan, free love. Free love. I grew up in the 80s. Gen Xers, we grew up in the 80s. There was no such thing as a free lunch, much less free love. But millennials, and now followed by Gen Z, they don't even need to see you face-to-face to communicate because they feel comfortable using technology. And for the first time in history, we have younger generations that know more about something we need to know. We'll bring a brand new computer home. We'll call our kids over. We'll point to the computer. We'll say to our kids, how do you install the parental controls? They've got the answers. 90% of millennials check their phones texts, and social media before getting out of bed, and 65% spend as much time, if not more, with their friends online versus in person. And this is before COVID, spending more time online versus in person. Look at the weekly social media usage between Gen Z and millennials. Top three platforms: YouTube, Instagram, Snap. Now, what I like, though, is interesting about these percentages is that sometimes Facebook is kind of getting discounted as, that's the old people's social media network. But still, Facebook still have a strong presence, almost 87% with millennials. And 87% of millennials, they're 40% of the workforce. Facebook still is a player in that kind of the social media communication tool. If you're on social media, please come find me. My dad, he's a baby boomer. He's on Facebook. He unfriended me, claimed it was an accident, but he did it. Here's a social media difference, I think, when it comes to older generations and younger generations. So let's take Facebook, for example. We all know what Facebook is. Facebook is a great way to go look at the people you dated in high school and just make sure they're not doing as well as you are. But for the younger generation, social media is not a toy, it is a tool. It is not a toy, it is a tool. In fact, 60% of millennials believe social media literacy should be required of all employees. 60% believe social media literacy is required of all employees. Remember, they're 40% of the workforce right now. Their numbers are going to continue to grow. It only makes sense that we attempt to understand this communication tool that is so important to them. All right, that takes us to Generation Z. These are people born between 1997 and 2012. Gen Zers, if you're out there, let's hear from the Gen Zers. Gen Z. This is the brand new generation in the workforce. 74 million Gen Zs. They account for 40% of all consumers. They're 25% of the US population. They watch 68 videos a day. So you want to think about how best to communicate and training and getting across messages, important messages. Video is a great way to communicate with Generation Z. They are also, though, tend to be risk averse, and that's going to be further cemented by two of the biggest generational signposts for this generation. One being COVID, and again also Black Lives Matter. So this idea that COVID is going to really shape this younger generation, and also this generation, as they're very value-driven, cause-driven, as you've seen that reflected in the actions they're taking when it comes to Black Lives Matter, taken to what's going on with COVID. So they're going to be a very value-driven generation, and also one that's going to take action on causes that they feel that are important. They are also a generation that personalizes everything. Think about this. Technology has allowed this younger generation to personalize everything. Their cell phone rings, their social media presence, the clothes they wear, the cars they drive. They can personalize it. Now, there is a clothing store called Land Sharks. It's in Saugatuck, Michigan. I interviewed the owner. It's a guy named David. Even during this time period of COVID, David's done some really interesting things. He holds happy hours on Facebook where he gives away different gift cards and really engages a lot of the younger generations, especially the younger generations that's had to miss high school graduations. So he does a lot of interactive things online to engage with not just potential customers, but really to kind of keep the community together during this COVID period. But he has lots of young people working for him. The first thing that he did differently was his job application. Now, I would probably safe to say all of us have filled out a job application at one time or the other, but this is how his job application starts. And I won't read this whole thing, but I love that last line. If you're interested in meeting and working with some real fun and talented people, please answer the questions below, preferably honestly. So what has he done that's interesting here? He's taken something we've all seen, a job application, and he's personalized it. And he really is looking at ways to engage the younger generation to kind of present their personalized version of themselves. So here's some questions on the job application. I won't read them all. But number 2, how many of your friends are getting married this summer, and how many weddings do you anticipate standing at? When I asked him about this question, he said a lot of people in their 20s, younger 20s, their friends are getting married. He said if they're standing in the wedding, they're going to want Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. He said summer is our busiest time. He said I can't afford to have lots of people off during the weekends. He said, so rather than asking them how many weekends they're going to need off this summer, he said, I asked him, how many weddings do you anticipate standing in? Are you really good at anything? Please explain either way. He said, I'm just putting a different spin on those standard questions we ask people. Things like, tell me something good about yourself, tell me something you need to work on. He said, I'm just asking the question differently, hoping they give me a more personalized answer. What is your favorite book and why? I asked him why he asked that question. He said, I like to read, so I'd like to know what people are reading. But what I find most interesting is he has something called the Honey Badger Award. Honey Badger Award is given to people who go above and beyond, not just doing their standard job, but above and beyond. It's based on a YouTube video called the Honey Badger video. If you go online, you can find the video. It does have profanity, I'll warn you there. But the Honey Badger Award works like this. You go above and beyond in your job. He says, we tell you we're going to pay for your dinner. You go out to eat. We pay for dinner. He said, and if you're over 21, we pay for drinks too. He said, but we do ask that you ask another employee to go with you. You can choose anybody you want, but you ask somebody else to go with you. And during the course of the meal, he says the two of you have to come up with at least one idea to improve Land Sharks, the store. And you present that idea at our monthly meeting. And I said, wow. I said, do you get a lot of good ideas? He said, well, they have been drinking. If they're over 21, they have been drinking. He said, but most importantly, they bring up things that don't occur to me. He said, on a small scale, we had somebody say, allow someone else to choose the different type of music played on the music app every hour. He said, that's easy. That costs me nothing. He said, but what it does is it allows them to personalize their workspace just like they personalize their clothes, their cell phone rings. It allows them to give them their personal stamp on what they do. Now, I spoke to Diana Montoya. Now, Diana, she is a millennial. And I asked Diana, what advice would you give to a Gen Zer? What advice, she's participated in the Patient Safety Summit. I believe she told me this was her third one. What advice would you give? And tell me about your learning process.
You have to be flexible to change. The medical profession is just constantly changing. We're constantly pushing out education with a new procedure, a new policy, some new medication that treats X, Y, and Z. So you've got to be flexible to change, but you also have to be willing just to have that continuous learning, lifelong learning, just mindset. Like you just don't get out of college and know everything that you need to know. You need to take every opportunity to continue to learn and grow. So something that was super impactful for me last year was when they were talking about abuse and sexual trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And how much of an impact healthcare workers have. It was a surprising statistic. It was a high number of people who had healthcare contact during their trafficking situation, and it was missed. And so that was super impactful. I was like, I would not have even have asked any of these questions or been open to this problem. Like it was so huge. It just left me speechless, to be honest.
Final person I want to quote, is Trisha. Trisha and I went old school. It's no video. It's just an actual quote. But Trisha has a baby boomer. She's been in healthcare for 41 years. I asked her, what does she like about what she does? And this is what Trisha told me. Trisha said, I love what I do. She says, I don't like what I do. I love what I do. She said, when I came into this job, I did not know squat. Not everyone can succeed in a job like this. You must have a true passion for improving patient safety and quality of patient care. In my current role, I'm on the technical edge of the latest and greatest treatments for patients. For example, I have the opportunity to review uterus transplant cases. I didn't even know you could do that till she told me this. What terrific cases to review. To be involved in reviewing cases such as this has been phenomenal. I never would have had this type of opportunity I would never have had this type of opportunity I have in my current role if I was working on the nursing floor. Give Trisha a big shout out. If you know her, tell her thank you from me. It's those generational signposts. My grandmother. All I wanted to do with my grandmother was go out to dinner. One of my favorite things. But because I disregarded her generational signpost, I thought to myself, if it's not important to me, it can't be that important. I got the opposite reaction. I slowed her down, I disengaged from her, and I ticked her off. It's those generational signposts. That's how we take multiple generations and work and succeed as one. Thank you very much. I hope you had as much fun as I did working virtually. We're going to open it up for a few questions. Again, if we do not have time to address your questions, please contact me. Here's all my contact info. Please contact me. I will answer your questions. I'll get you those videos that we were unable to play and answer any questions you have. If we want to try to take a few questions right now, let's try to take a few questions. I've got my monitor reader over there, and we're going to see if any questions come in. So again, if you have questions though, and we don't have time to address them, or maybe it's something you don't want to address in front of the virtual audience, please send me an email. I'm Meagan at meaganjohnson.com. I've got somebody raising their hand, my assistant over there, baby boomer assistant, yeah?
Yeah, on the Q&A, you've got one that says there were technical difficulties with the video. Will you be offering a replay for those that registered?
Yes, so I will either offer a replay, you can email me. So the question was, will I offer a replay on the videos? If you email me, I will send you the videos, and then I am assuring that I assume that this program will be available, and you'll be able to watch it, and we'll get you those videos. So we'll figure out a way to get you the videos, no problem. I apologize about that. Virtual world is so exciting, isn't it? But the best part of being virtual is we don't have to wear shoes. Do we have any more questions over there from the board? Asking my baby boomer assistant over there.
Lots of nice comments. Meagan, you are awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Love you, the personalized format. Would love to see the videos also.
I had a great time. So sorry we had a few technical difficulties, but that's the best part of the virtual world. All right, thanks everybody. Please contact me if you have a question or a comment. Have a wonderful, safe, oh my gosh, I was going to say summer, but we're already in September. Have a great holiday season. It's going to be the holidays. See you very, very soon.